Okay, it is Wednesday morning, July 31st. We've had about a full week of training camp, and it honestly feels like I have not been behind this microphone for a good, not 8 days, but 8 weeks, because so much has happened. Before we get to that, I need to get to our guest, who, I'll be honest, I usually introduce with a backhanded compliment, some sort of ball busting, might just take a straight out dig at him. But my guy is launching a new podcast today. He is recording it soon after this, I believe. He's on morning radio now a couple times a week. NBC Sports Boston every Tuesday. He has reported on the league for over 20 years, including a Matt Judon scoop yesterday that they are far, far apart, meaning Judon and the Patriots and the contract extension. And now here he is spending time with us, Mike Giordano. Thank you very much, my good friend, for coming back.
Perfect. Mike Giardi. Yes, all those things. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Very rarely do I say no to you. And usually the only reason I say no to you is, aside from the fact that I don't like you, is that I'm completely swamped. But you're persuasive, and here I am today. So we'll see. If this one goes badly, I don't know. Maybe you won't see me again.
Yeah, as they say, they don't make them like the Giordanos. So here we are. Day 6 of camp was yesterday. It was the second padded practice. My line this time of year is often the trends will tell us the truth. We don't know anything yet. And of course, we have phrases going around like panic meter or trade him with Matt Judon. And the offense sucks and deja vu and PTSD. And a lot of that is just like reactive, typically negative Boston, let's just, attitudes, because we can pin it on Boston sports media, which I think everyone understands is made up of different individuals with different outlooks, but gets broad brushed when the loudest mouths and the biggest names take the same approach every day of where can we tweak this team? And yesterday, because I'm just going to hit this right on the head, the lead topic on Boston Sports Tonight, which I did with Mike Felger and Michael Holland, you've done before, obviously, was Joe Milton looks better than Drake Maye. This is sensationalized nonsense. It's courtesy of our friend Ben Volen, whose nickname is Cholin Volen. He got on the shows. We can dive into the numbers why it's not true, even though I understand watching how bad Drake's been the last couple of days. Some people might buy this, but it's not true. So take it from here.
Yeah, so look, Joe Milton throws the ball at one speed at all times. So let's just start with that part of his game. And, if you did any research on him before the draft, I was down at the Senior Bowl. You talk to people like 6 years in college football. He's 3 years older than Drake Maye at this point, or 2.5, whatever the difference is. So he should be a little bit further along just based on experience and where he's been in college. But one of his big critiques is the ability to process the game. So it's great that you have this physical tool and you're 6'5", 240 pounds, and you look like a great god, but to play the position, you have to be able to process the position. And they're not even really giving him many opportunities to do that. So when he does get out there and he does throw a laser beam, it's like, oh my goodness. Okay, well, he had like 4 reps. Yeah, but what are we talking about? How many reps are we talking about? Who is he repping against? Which is always a big thing to me. I know you can only play who's in front of you, so you can't give them demerits. But when you start talking about, well, this guy's better than that guy, well, this guy's throwing against guys that are going to be working at Starbucks and Lowe's, 3 weeks from now, right? That's the reality of it. Or, going to go play football in Canada and be lucky if they make a team there. Like that's the reality of it versus, the situation that Drake's in. And look, that's not to defend Drake, and I know we're going to get into it, but like, it creates, because of the powers that be and the people that listen to, and you mentioned Felger and Maz on the from 2 to 6 is the show that really kind of drives the conversation. We could talk about like trying to be responsible journalists and let's give it nuance. That show from 2 to 6 has a massive audience, and when they run with something, as they did yesterday with Volen's headline and his story, then it becomes basically like prevailing opinion for everyone, and that we're all thinking that. It's not true that we're not all thinking that as we're sitting here shooting it apart, but it does help influence the people that aren't there or just, worship at their altar, which God bless them. I'm not knocking them. They've made a hell of a living and they're really good at what they do, but like, it's not the full reality of the situation. And it just leads to, it creates controversy that shouldn't be there. I mean, maybe controversy is not the right word, but like, oh my God, is Joe Milton really already better than Drake Maye? Did they really screw up the 3rd pick? And should they have drafted Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors or just freaking relax.
No, I think
go back to the conversation we had beforehand too. Like this wasn't gonna be some immediate thing for Drake Maye. It was there were things that need to be worked on that are going to continue to have to be worked on probably for years. That doesn't mean he can't play before then, but there's things that he's going to have to hone that, quite frankly, someone who's been 6 years in college as Joe Milton probably shouldn't and won't.
Yeah, I don't want to spend any more than 2 more minutes on this. I say it for the exact reasons you did, and I'm glad you laid it out. It's become a talking point. This is my ability to push back against that, as I did in the A block last night, being like, if you've actually charted every single rep, who's passing, who's catching, what was the route, who is in defense, was it the first defense, second, third, fourth string, whatever, you understand this is just not the case. So I say this to everyone to take a breath. It's not to say Drake has been good the last 3 days. He has not. But over those same last 3 practices, that would drive someone to say that Joe Milton, who's taken fewer than half the reps that Drake Maye has, but has the same number of interceptions as Drake Maye, has the same number of sacks in team periods, meaning he has a higher sack rate than Drake Maye does, and the same number of botched snaps while completing 0 passes longer than 10 yards down the football field. It cannot possibly be true then that quarterback is outperforming Drake Maye, who granted has been bad, but is also flatly better the first 3 practices. So that's a case. We'll get into Drake Maye a little bit later. It's just not true.
Can I give you one more on this? And everybody took their pants off for it, like fans, even media, and it was a phenomenal play.
You're on one today. I love this. Keep going.
Was it Friday when Joe Milton? It was Friday or Sunday. The 60-yard bomb to Javon Baker, right?
That it was a sack.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was a sack.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a lot of the tweets of the people that you at home follow put that in there. So while it was great that the end result was a 60-yard completion, guess what? It never happened. The play never happened.
And that's part of the difficulty of reporting on camp, right? Like I will check with you sometimes. We ask on the Hill, what did you see on this? Did so-and-so get to him? Because the players can't contact the quarterbacks. So sometimes they run straight by them. Other times they stop, go hands up as like, I got the sack, but I'm not going to break the practice rules of not touching the quarterback. In that instance, Joe Milton stepped through like the Red Sea had parted, and the red was not, his non-contact jersey. It was every other defender who could have grabbed him and thrown him to the ground. That's all that there is. So just relax. The machine is doing its thing, but here we are pushing and fighting against the machine in this little rinky dink podcast. Now, the way I really wanted to start the show, as you know, when I sent you this rundown yesterday, before I got the rundown, that threw my head into a tizzy briefly, and then I didn't even get to address the Milton stuff. So this is really just pent up BS me venting out here.
Your podcast, you're allowed to let it loose.
The question I had for you is this: what is the best thing you've seen at Patriots camp? Tumultuous start overall, but the best thing you've seen through 6 days. Oh, come on, Mike.
You really have. Look.
Mike,
I don't think there's one thing that really jumped out to me and has been like, oh yeah, that's great. That looks wonderful. I mean, obviously I think the overall play of the defense, just the way they look, but I kind of expected that going in.
Let me go first and be a good host and buy you some time.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a play, but it's, you have
I missed this question, by the way, in the rundown. Did you put this at the top of the rundown?
Yeah, it is at the top of the rundown. It's in bold, actually. So I'm just going to let you squint there.
God damn it. I looked at,
very good job by you.
I got every other one listed except for that one.
Caedan White. Okay. It's not a play. It's not a day. It's not a position. It's not a unit. It's a player. This dude is ready to destroy every single thing in front of him. I'm talking about that as an edge setter against the run. I'm talking about as a pass rusher on the interior. I'm talking about one-on-ones where you might as well just exit stage left anytime you're across from him, whether you're a center, a guard, a tackle, because he is ready for his breakout year. And it's early, and we can do the small sample size thing. I'm here to declare Caedan White breakout year 2 is coming. In fact, it's already started. He's the only player so far on defense who has multiple sacks, multiple run stuffs, and has looked as good in one-on-ones as he has. Granted, offensive line, not very good. But he's also the only player doing this in multiple spots along the defensive line. He is the best thing I've seen in camp, and I was hesitant about crowning him year 2, even with Drake Maye saying something in the spring and everyone going, oh, the year 2 lead, former second-round pick, yada, yada, yada. What I did say is we'll know early, right? He's an older prospect. The physical development is pretty much done. But he can refine his technique. He's a guy who converted from tight end to defensive line midway through college. And that development, that piece is taking off now. And I absolutely love watching it every day.
Well, in my defense, though I did miss the question because I was bleary-eyed when I looked at it. My two up, he's one of my two
Okay.
up.
All right.
So
Good.
we're gonna get to that, but like he was the first name. That was a no doubt, no brainer. Like, love everything that he's doing. But I will stick with my original answer. Just in general, like the defense is good. We knew the defense was good. The defense has had largely dominated the first 6 sessions of practice, and as it should be. They're going to, again, as last year, they're going to need to be as good as humanly possible, because I think points are going to be maybe not as difficult to score as last year. Certainly not as difficult to score last year. I hope not as difficult to score as last year, but they're going to be offensively challenged, and the defense is going to have to carry the better portion of the day for 17 regular season weeks.
When you crossed your fingers there with both hands for the YouTube audience, and it looked like a couple of middle fingers, did you do that on purpose? What was it's just disgusting?
Oh, that did look like
this
that.
is pretty dangerous.
Wow.
We might have to
No,
blur that
that's
out.
that right there. See, if I did that as opposed to this.
Oh, I need you on Wednesdays now.
And those were for you.
Can
by
you
the way.
stop flying those birds in my direction,
What?
please? We do need you every Wednesday, though, because you did radio yesterday, you did TV, you covered practice, you wrote, you reported, and you are as burnt as your face looks. And so this is great.
It's raw Giardi.
Yeah. Speaking of raw, just gonna let that hang there for a second. Matt Judon,
Yeah. Okay.
his feelings right now are at the forefront of the news. Sticking with the defense, right? Caedan White's been great. He's on the edge sometime. Maybe he started opposite Judon early in camp, but he's getting more run, more opportunities, better looks because Judon's gone. The big news of camp, if you had to say, hey, what's been going on? Well, we had a player who was a full participant for 4 days and gave one of the more candid open press conferences we've ever had from a Patriots player in day one. And in that press conference, he says, I will practice. I've got to play under this contract. I signed it, and that's what it is. But please go talk to Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh. If you can, tell them to give me a little bit more money. Well, then on day 5, when the Patriots put on the pads for the first time, a year after he never participated in padded practices. And I think that detail is being lost when he went head-to-head with Belichick and eventually got his new deal, revised deal, but never participated in padded practices. On day 5, the pads come on, and Matt Judon strolls on in street clothes. And then talks with Drake Maye after sitting on a trash can and some mats as they're going through positional drills, and leaves after about a minute. 30 minutes later, he does the exact same thing that he had asked the media to do. Goes and talks to Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf and confronts him with these wild gestures and is talking more directly to Groh. And after 10 more minutes, leaves entirely. Was not there yesterday, meaning Tuesday. Another full padded practice. Today's an off day. You have since reported that morning, preceding the conversation, the Patriots were far, far, far apart with Judon. So I ask you this. A, do you have an update? If not, how bad is this situation really? The optics in the media stuff is already taken off. But with the actual relationship part of this, how much is the damage? And is there anything new?
Well, let's just start with the idea that there's been some pushback from the Patriots that the media and the fans have pushed the animosity part of this conversation a little too far, and that it's not nearly as bad as you think it is. To which I would tell you, I didn't write about it because I believe it's just strictly damage control. Like, it was an embarrassing moment for a lot of parties caused by Matt Judon, right? Like, let's put front and center. Matt Judon decided to behave in a manner that 5 days ago he said he wasn't going to behave. And he put a rookie head coach and a rookie GM in the spotlight. He did it publicly, which, I don't care who you are. There's an element of being shown up there that doesn't sit well with anyone. So while, again, they're trying to, as I mentioned, they're trying to push back on it, I would tell you that if you really meant it, or you really wanted to put a real voice to it, then Drake Maye or Elliott Wolf would have been available yesterday or today on the off day to say, hey, look, no, you guys are getting this all wrong. It was just, a passionate conversation, but, no harm, no foul. And we're just trying to work through things. And we understand his frustration and we still want him on the team. We didn't get any of that, right? So the last 24 hours, they just let it fester. He's not at practice. He's not at the facility. Is it him who didn't show up, or is it them who told him to stay away? Nobody wants to comment on what side that is. So they're letting him sort of, they're letting him kind of rot out there a little bit. Like, okay, you did what you did, and we'll push back gently. We're not going to put a public face to this. We're just going to let it sit. So Look, unless something happened last night that I don't know about in terms of negotiations, the chasm between the two is so wide that I don't even know how you bridge that gap. Like there's no gap to be bridged because it's so wide. So the question is, is cooler heads prevail? Can you reach Judon or his agent and say, look, man, we'll give him a bump for this year. He's free to go next year. Like, let's get him to 15, $16 million incentives that maybe can kick him up to 20, because as Judon has pointed out on some guy's podcast, who did an awesome job, by the way, I forget the name of the podcast, that he knows their salary cap figure. Like this has sort of been, to me, a calculated approach. Oh, I'm going to be the good guy. Oh, here comes the podcast where I'm talking about their salary cap number and why aren't they going to give it to me? And I'm smart. I gave them I presented the numbers to them. I wrote up my agent says I could be an agent myself one day. And then to this point where on the first day of practice, he's one of the first people up the stairs and he's wearing flip-flops, sweatpants, sweatshirt, baseball hat, phone in hand. I mean, the phone in hand, just for people, like, that's not allowed. Players are not supposed to be bringing their devices up there.
Hitting pause on that
like
for a
right
second.
away.
Do you remember, because this is my first year in the beat, 2018, Kenny Britt coming up the
Yes.
stairs.
Yes.
When you're leaving the stadium the way the players do, there's basically coming up a hill, right? And the far corner of the hill is the hill that everyone knows where they run sprints after practice and, put it in the bank, conditioning, yada, yada. On the near side that's adjacent to the actual stadium is a super sized set of stairs that they walk up in their cleats. And right next to that is a VIP section, often with player families and yada, yada. And this will be quicker than it sounds. Kenny Britt comes up the stairs one day. Instead of continuing up the stairs and onto the fields that are right in front of him, he takes a quick right, goes up to the VIP section and just kind of chills and has his phone. Practice is going on. This is my second week covering the Patriots, who are dealing with all of the Gronk stuff being traded, coming off the Eagles Super Bowl, yada, yada. No surprise, Kenny Britt did not really play for the Patriots.
No, he was an odd duck, and that was
phone in hand.
His reputation. Yeah, reputation. But so to the Judon thing, it's like, okay, you're already, and you know what? It's actually funny because I saw him with his phone earlier in the week too. So it wasn't the first time he did it, but at least in those instances, he was ready to practice and practice. This was a clear to me, like, all right, time to escalate. Like, getting along, going along to get along. That's not working anymore. I was trying to present the good guy and hoping they would see I'm a good teammate and I'm out here working. And even Godchow was not doing as much as me. And, I'm trying to put this out there. And then it was like, you know what? This is crap. You're here. I'm here. We're not getting any closer. I'm your best player. Now Barmore's out. Like, I'm just putting it all out there. And it was a bad look. And like I said, I wrote last night, it's kind of already an inflection point. You're really not even, well, now we're a full week into football, not counting the OTAs, but like real football, getting ready for the season, and you're already at this point for Elliott Wolf and Giardi Mayo. Like, what do you do? How do you handle it? And we're going to talk about it. Did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? Did somehow Judon get back in the fold? But then if they're 0-6, is he complete jackwagon again? Like, who knows how it's going to play, but it's going to be something that's going to be monitored, and it's going to be something that's going to be attached to them for this year.
So a couple things. Number one, the timing point you mentioned about when the podcast that Matt Judon, best I can tell, recorded about 10 days ago. So before camp, there was a live show that he did with the Shut Up Mark with a C podcast. I'd never heard before this, but you're right. They got him to talk in a way that was very open and honestly productive for people trying to follow this story and know how he feels and why. That podcast dropped 8-9 days later, right after this kind of show. I don't know if that's directly related. To me, it would be strategic if he was intending to go and kind of make a mess, as he did coming back to Elliott Wolf. But let's table that for a second. Number two, speaking of timing, all of this happens not only in the day the Patriots put on pads when there's a greater injury risk for players like him and Godchow, who also has an issue and whose agent showed up that same day. And it was just a really big, what the heck's going on? More weird and strange, though weird is now this kind of taboo word. We're just going to say it a bunch of times. Weird day than really toxic, I would say. But the reason I bring up Barmore is because, of course, he's out indefinitely with blood clots. We wish him well. Glad they caught this very early. Blood clots took out David Andrews for an entire season in 2019. I don't know what Barmore's timetable is, neither do they. But it struck me that the agent for one player who wants a new contract, suddenly descends on Foxborough the day after the only better defensive tackle on the roster is out indefinitely. So his client becomes much more valuable. And at the same time, Matt Judon, whether because they were in pads or because a podcast was going to drop that night, but is the only better pass rusher on the roster than Christian Barmore, now finally starts to make a mess, which really makes them, if there's a connection there, and I'm not alleging that there is one, but would obviously be in the best interest of business, quite like a vulture, I would say at this point. And I give credit to the Patriots for just kind of sitting tight, because the way I look at this is this. Yeah, the PR has been bad the last couple of days. They'll take the PR hit if it means they get a better deal in the long run. And if they keep Judon, just say, stay home. We'll figure this out. Unless you're ready to work, stay home. That's a win for Mayo. That's a win for Elliott Wolf. And ultimately, if they do trade him, it's a huge bummer. I would rather see Matt Judon play in New England. But time passing, everyone taking a breath. They're off today. We'll see what Thursday brings. I think when we get some time in perspective, for now, to me, I still think this is more of a PR and an optics issue than Matt Judon's rankling the entire locker room, where no media member has been, by the way. So they're talking about a locker room divide. Right. They're making it up or don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
Because everyone else in the locker room either is behind Gerard Mayo, as everything we've heard since the spring, or has a contract extension.
Yes.
He doesn't have much leverage.
No, and I'll shoot down the locker room thing. I don't think there's a problem in the locker room at all. Like they had a bad year last year. They're hoping for a better year this year. Matthew Judon is, if not their best player, he's one of their 2 or 3 best players. And I think if you pulled the locker room, just talking to guys privately, like they want as many good players as possible. Yeah. You know, like if you trade just a random, like if you go trade your first round pick next year for Brandon Ayuk, the locker room will be thrilled. They don't care about your first round pick. They just care. They want, give me guys, give me dudes. You give me more dudes, we have a better chance to win games.
Funny you bring up Brandon Ayuk for a first round pick. I think someone proposed a first round pick swap fairly recently.
Yeah, I think we texted about that. I would have said no to you.
Yeah, I think we just didn't text in for a few days after.
Yeah, I think your feelings were hurt. Yeah. So you bring up Wolf, and you're talking about the PR and the optics of it. Here's my biggest thing, and one of the reasons why it bothered me as it did, and this is twofold. One, the immediate reaction was, aside from the people assailing Judon for his behavior, was, oh, he showed up Mayo. And I actually thought, and again, without knowing full details of the conversation, that Giardi did his best to sort of settle it down. I mean, when Judon went over to the pads and sat on the blocking dummies 6 feet in the air, again, making a spectacle of himself so all could see, and Giardi is standing inside him and he's got his mouth covered. It was a long conversation, not like the one on the trash can earlier. This was a longer conversation. It seemed a little bit less demonstrative. But I think that put him in a bad spot. And what put him in a bad spot is not only Judon's behavior, but it's management. It's Elliott Wolf. And if you want to tie Robert Kraft into this, because he's the one who has to write the check. Last year, when they moved the money from Judon's contract in 2024, this year, into 2023 to make him happy and end the hold in, they knew right away, in that very moment, the clock had started on next year's holdout. So, okay, you go through a season. If Bill's here, do we think Judon's back? I don't know. I know some people have speculated he's gone. I think Bill kind of likes Judon, so maybe Judon was one of the guys that he'd reward. Regardless, new management gets in place, and they had months before the draft to figure this out. Are we close? Is there something that can be done? Is he part of our future? Or is he a one-year guy? And no, we're not really that close. So you know what? Screw it. On draft day or right before the draft, we're going to spin him off for a pick. Someone who's looking for a pass rusher, instead of putting one in the draft, we're trading him at the draft.
Well, let's stay with the draft for a second, because I want to move on from Judon, but I think the point you're getting to is a trade, right? Like you could have done a trade earlier. You could have added an asset at a time that you would have loved an extra draft pick. This is a rebuild. More draft picks, the better.
But they just created this situation. They let this fester, and they know that they haven't been able to close the gap. They've made offers. They haven't, and he's here, and they're here, and they haven't even come anywhere close in the middle. So what's the calculus here? What did you think was going to happen? You think that you were going to make this guy play on $7 million-ish, whatever the contract is, did you think he was going to bend to you and just take the sweetener or the what he feels is a low ball offer? Like, if you know anything about Matt Judon cares about his money, and I don't fault him for that. I care about my money too. Godchow cares about his money, but like, if he's not getting his money, he's not gonna be happy. And if he's not happy, then you get what happened there. And again, now we're talking about that more than we're talking about football. And there's a lot of football stuff that's happened in the last week too.
Yeah, let's talk about the football really quick. I texted
Okay.
an NFC executive yesterday, just, hey, I don't know if you have any interest, but what do you think Judon would fetch in the trade market? He said a third round pick or equivalent to that. Really quickly, would you take that deal right now?
Oh, a third round pick in a heartbeat, because I think it's more like a fourth or a fifth. And I talked to a couple people league wide, and like, it doesn't seem to be an inordinate amount of interest. And I started to go down the list of like, well, who Chicago would be a team that I'd be on the phone with right now. Chicago wants a pass rusher opposite Montez Sweat. Austin Booker, who I love, is a rookie out of Kansas, but he's a fifth round pick. He's raw. He's got 500 college snaps. Like, that's a team that's trying to get to the playoffs, that actually might have a window to get to the playoffs. Go trade for Matt Judon. Maybe they're a team that would say, okay, we'll give you that third or a fourth. But by and large, I think it's going to be like, he's still going to be unhappy with his contract.
Yeah.
If we don't have any plans on extending him, why am I going to give you a day 2 pick?
Breaking news. We've got a young, exciting underdog team in Boston that's making a run for the playoffs. No, it's not the Patriots. Well, not the Patriots yet. It's the Red Sox. And if you've been following this season, you know that the Red Sox have been a hotter ticket ever since the season started. I want you to get down to Fenway with Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, where you will find killer last-minute deals, all in pricing, including those pesky fees, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. Guys, you've heard me talk about Game Time before. And look, whether you are in New England, whether you're down in New York, whether you're out on the West Coast, you can browse through the Game Time app to find any seat you want. Customize your spot, flash deals, zone deals. I've done this before, gone to a Yankee series. You could go to a makeup date, whatever it is to get you back into baseball with one of the best seasons we've had so far, especially for the Red Sox. And you can do this, again, with the lowest price guaranteed. I don't care where you get your tickets, but they should be now with the Game Time app, which you can download right now. Create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All you need to do is create an account and redeem this code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. It could be MLB, WNBA, concerts, etc. Just go to Game Time today. Find last-minute tickets in the lowest price guaranteed. Christian Barmore. And again, folks wanting to get to more of the training camp stuff, we have a ton of notes. We have a lot more coming. Yes. So just hang in. It's just hard to get around the idea that through 6 days of training camp, when I said the truth is in the trends, we haven't had as much time to build trends yet. The best player in the team being in a contract dispute and showing up in a way that's unprecedented is going to get some airtime. So
yes,
here's where we pivot, because again, there are ripple effects. Christian Barmore is ruled out indefinitely on Sunday. Matt Judon does all this on Monday. Barmore has since been replaced in practices Monday and Tuesday by Daniel Ekuale, who I picked as kind of this like little bounce back breakout player a couple of months ago, but to me is not a starter in this league. And so I ask you, and then we'll get to Drake Maye and everything we've seen, what we like, what we want to see next. How do you replace Christian Barmore if we assume he's out for the season, which I think has to be our baseline assumption until we're told otherwise, because he's going to be on blood thinners. You can't play football on blood thinners, even as you're getting weaned off, and then you got to build back up your strength and all these different things. My answer would be schematically. This is not a one-for-one deal. And you could make it one-for-one by replacing Christian Barmore on early downs. Be like, hey, Armon Watts, you played for the Steelers. You played across the defensive line. Before that with the Vikings, had like 5.5 sacks. That's great. Armon Watts and Devon Conchos are starting defensive tackles. Not enough pass rush for me on early downs when teams are really going to make hay. Good run stopping. And then on third down, it's Daniel Ekuale, and then you're dipping into like Sam Roberts. You're going to kick Keon White inside, and then Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche, or maybe Matt Judon's back. I don't like it. My answer would be more single gap. I trust Armon Watts to get more of an interior push if he's allowed, not just a 2-gap and hold up and face double teams, but if they play more 4 down. What do you think of that? And if not, what's your answer?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go, because, forget about having someone who's even on the same level as Barmore. Like, I think there are multiple levels down to their, whether you're talking about Watts, whether you're talking about Roberts, Ekuale, any one of those guys, they're just, Christian Barmore was one of the best defensive linemen in football last year, and I think they were planning on him being even a better player this year. So it's got to be scheme, because from a skill talent perspective, you don't have that. I think you can obviously, on obvious passing situations, even if Judon is not here, I think you still have enough people that can go get the pass. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have some smaller guys on the field rushing the passer, but I think you could get by there. It's just the early downs, and obviously sort of the attention that he commanded last year, especially as it went along, where two bodies needed to be put on him, and that's tough to replace when all of a sudden now there's a free body, because you're not really worried about getting beat by Ekawale or Sam Roberts on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and when I say play more 4 down, that's not just like a broad brush, simple wave a wand, there's the fix, right? I just think it alleviates pressure on players. You talk about Barmore was someone who had a gravity to him, right? He demanded double teams. He demanded, if we're talking about a receiver, a safety over the top. What the Patriots would do then, and did towards the end of last season, was work that against different teams who anticipated a double team, and they would draw and build their stunts and twists around, okay, all the attention's going here. We'll have him loop around the opposite way and kind of have a pick set. These are not uncommon tactics, but when you can't bank on a team saying we can't afford to single block him and then flip that against them, you need to get more creative. And I think just create more single, blocking opportunities across the board on early downs and late downs, because you're just not, you need as many guys freed up on their own as possible when the talent is not there to say, oh, he'll win. Now you need someone to step up, probably on every different down, especially if Judon's not here. Speaking of stepping up, Drake Maye, 3 straight below average practices. His completion percentage over the last 3 days, 53% in team periods. It's about 60 for camp, a little bit over that. And this is a guy that I look at and say, okay, he's going through some growing pains. Like facing a projected top 5 defense is going to do that. Playing with a bottom 5 offensive line, missing David Andrews, by the way, the last 2 practices is going to do that. And the receivers, we know what they are. What do you know about Drake Maye? What's your big takeaway just from watching him the last week?
I think I wrote as you did the fill in the blank, miles to go before he sleeps. Like we knew that he was a more on the raw side as a prospect, and that there are things that needed to be worked on, particularly his base, his footwork, and those sorts of things that I was encouraged by in the spring, because I felt like every time we saw him in the spring, he was making steps in the right direction. And I was like, which kind of got me amped up here for the start of camp, thinking like, I don't know, if he continues to make that sort of progress, can he, by the end of August, is he really going to be able to challenge Jacoby for the number 1 job? And what we've seen here is a guy whose head is swimming, which has led to bad footwork, which has led to slower processing, which has led to inaccuracies. And I don't think any of those things are things that can't be overcome, because then you see moments where, again, it does come together and it is a quick release and the ball's where it's supposed to be and it's thrown with great velocity. And, there was a play yesterday, it was in team, it ended up as an incomplete pass, but he was flushed. He went to his left. He flipped his hips and he threw a rocket to Jalen Polk. It was a little high.
Yep.
As Polk was coming on the cross. Polk should have caught the ball. Like, that's if you want to be a number 1 or number 2 or number 3 receiver in this league, Jalen Polk, you're a 2nd-round pick. They believe that you can be that. Then you have to catch that ball. And I was like, okay, I took heart in some of the incompletions during that drill, where I think he was 1 for 5 or 1 for 6, that there were a couple balls that he put in receivers that receivers should have caught that didn't. But it's just not been consistent enough. And I guess it's you have to preach patience. And here's the other problem is, now I'm getting a lot of people asking me, well, Mac Jones. I'm like, right. Mac Jones was billed as what? The absolute opposite of Drake Maye, not a physically gifted player. Drake Maye, extremely physically gifted. Drake Maye, raw, needs work on footwork and needs, work processing, whereas Mac Jones came out with the computer brain, blah, blah, blah. His brain was a superpower. Turned out, by the way, his brain wasn't his superpower, because he made so many dumb throws in years 2 and 3 that I lost count. But that's just sort of where we're at right now. And I guess I'm a little disappointed, just because I thought, based on what I saw in the spring and knowing the work that he put in between the spring and getting ready for camp, that we would see even more of a jump. We haven't. So, okay, it's, stay 6.
And we had a measured way to look at that progress, right? It wasn't just what you were writing, what I was writing, what, anybody else was writing. Oh, Drake Maye looks better and better. He leapt Bailey Zappi in the pecking order, going from number 3 to number 2, which then begs the obvious question, can Drake Maye jump to QB1? And right now, I would just say flatly, Jacoby Brissett's lead has grown over the first 6 days of
Yes.
camp. And that I don't think is terribly surprising. I think if I had to predict, I would have said it would have stayed steady over the first 6 days. Then Drake, as he gets adjusted to the speed and the padded practices and, the defense spinning the dial a little bit more, not to mention, again, the injuries around him, then he would start to make it up around the first and second preseason game. We're not there yet. We do have about 9 to 10 practices left, all 3 preseason games. And to me, for Drake Maye, not only just to want to see tangible progress, like better than 53% where he's been the last 3 days, which I will repeat. Same number of interceptions, Joe Milton, who's had fewer than half of the attempts that Drake Maye's had. Same number of sacks, so Drake Maye's still been better. But I just want to see him play a little calmer from the base up, because I think that's going to translate to everything down the field, where it's not that he's gun shy. He's going through his progressions. I mean, I wrote that he was gun shy yesterday. I should stick by that. But he's only had 3 days out of the 6, Mike, where he's made multiple passes longer than 10 yards down the field. This is a cannon-strapped, athletic, creative, off-platform thrower. The issue is when he doesn't have his feet set and he knows his arm is, coming, or his arm is ready to deliver and the pressure is coming, he will just go straight into whatever's most comfortable, whatever arm angle, wherever his feet are or aren't, and just try to get it in there. That's not going to work consistently right now. And so then once I think his feet calm down in the pocket or sliding away from pressure, everything else above the waist is going to follow. I don't really care about the arm angle as long as it gets there. But if the feet are off, that's what's leading to, I think, these errant throws. And I think a guy who's dealing with a lot because, again, just imagine the difference between having 2 feet on firm ground and land versus feel like you're trying to throw a football on a ship out in the middle of the ocean. Like, that's what Drake Maye looks like right now.
Yeah, you and I were having this conversation because I did write something about his, again, sort of, it's become like an over-reliance on the 3/4 arm angle stuff that's kind of driving me nuts because what's frustrated me is like receivers open in the flat. I know you've had a rush, but there is no rush here. Just turn your feet, plant, and throw. You're going to hit that 99 out of 100 times. Instead, to your point, things are so fast for him right now that, it's open. And instead of setting his feet, creating that nice base and foundation, he's just, boom, 3/4. And then the next thing you know, he's throwing a cutter or the ball's tailing away and he misses the receiver by 2 feet. And you're like, bro, it doesn't get any easier than that. In fact, in this league, as we say, the windows are very small. And when you have a window that's open like that, you have to hit those throws. You just have to. And he has consistently missed those throws thus far. And again, it's not because he doesn't have the arm talent or the brains. Everything is going like this.
Yeah.
It's too fast. And until he slows it down, we're going to continue to see those sort of erratic throws and erratic behavior overall in terms of his body and where his feet place.
Yeah, the erratic behavior, I think we can safely say belongs to Matt Judon. The erratic play is a little bit more
yes,
Drake Maye's domain.
Yes, erratic behavior with his legs. I didn't mean his head.
Yeah, flailing about. Look, I just want to see him throw downfield a little bit more. I want to see him be calmer in the pocket. I 1,000,000% believe Drake Maye will be better as we close out this week. Practices Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I don't know when the pads are going to come on. I don't even know if the Patriots have made that determination yet, coming off of 2 straight practices into an off day. Moving on. Stock up. You teased this already. Caedan White was one of your 2 players, guys that are surprising and or impressing you so far. I am going to answer my own question with a question. Ready?
Sure.
I'm
yes.
a jerk. Mike, who do you think is leading the Patriots in catches during team periods through 6 days of Patriots training camp?
Tyquan Thornton.
No. Solid guess, though. Not even
Austin
the right
Hooper.
Position, though.
Austin Hooper.
Austin Hooper. 11 catches in team periods for Austin Hooper. Couple things on this. Number one, they have been playing a lot more 2 tight end personnel, specifically with Jacoby Brissett, when they start these 7-on-7s and 11-on-11 periods. This is not 2 tight end sets, as I talked about last week with Doug Caedan, that's going to inspire any comparisons to past Patriot offenses, which more recently flopped when being compared to the original 2 tight end offense. It's just something to keep in note. Behind him, Reminders Stevenson has 10, Hunter Henry has 9, Jalen Polk and KJ Osborne both have 8. Hooper is both someone that both the quarterbacks trust in the flat as a checkdown option and someone up the seam. I think he's solid. I'm not projecting a even 600-yard season but just he's looked better than I thought he would.
Yeah, he has good hands, good sense of how guys are playing him and how to utilize his leverage versus theirs. Um, look, obviously it's some years removed now, but he was a huge force for Atlanta and signed a massive free agent contract when he left there, and then sort of has become a bit of a journeyman. I believe it's his fourth team in 4 years, but he's a pro. It's like I think I wrote this in the preview. He's not gonna. There's nothing that he does that's gonna wow you. Whereas, Gesicki obviously last year, even though, as we talked about, often he was more receiver than tight end. In fact, he was a receiver, and anytime they tried to have him block at the, at the strength of the play, it was an absolute debacle. Hooper's not that problem, but that there is sort of safety in that. Like I know what he is. I'm pretty certain I'm going to get the same type of effort and performance from him week after week, and I think that's beneficial for a team that's obviously been riding a roller coaster, offensively, period, and even at that position at times. So he's been a nice little ad for very little money. To your point, he's not catching 60 passes. I'd be shocked unless something happened under, but it's a nice little piece to have.
All right, you already teased Caedan White. We talked about him. Who is your second player as far as stock up so far early in camp?
So this might surprise you because we've talked about how the offensive line has been erratic and maybe has only had, I don't know, one good day out of 6. I'm going to say Caedan Wallace. I've seen enough with Caedan Wallace in moments. Again, it's not a consistent thing where I say to myself, oh, you know what? They may be right. He may be able to play left tackle. And obviously that's where he's settled in here in the last 4 days as they've sort of established for the first time a semi-consistent 5. I mean, obviously without David Andrews the last 2 days, but he would be in there were he not away from the team. So I think he has a chance. I think he's strong. I think he's smart. And I think he seems to be someone who's embracing the Scott Peters, the strike system that some of the nerds are really getting into.
Oh, come on. Don't do that to Taylor.
Taylor has to keep his pants on when we're talking about strike systems.
That's fine. You've used that line about pants on or pants off, I think 3 times now on the podcast.
Well, look,
$2.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. But you owe me like 6 beers, so let's just take it off my tab.
This is true.
So I wasn't sure about him in the spring. I was like, oh God, and they kind of, as the spring went on, they kind of went away. At least when we were there, from seeing him at left tackle, and I'm like, oh, so you talk about him being a possible left tackle, but now you've already made the determination that he's got to stay on the right side, and he's not even with the ones, consistently in the right side. Again, rookie, so you're still waiting for development, but then that he's gotten to this point, and that I've seen signs, and I've seen him pick up some stunts, during team period. I'm like, okay, I think I feel better about that pick and his capability of maybe making the switch, because I think athletically, you see, like, there's a good skill set there with that player.
We talk about measurable ways, or ways to measure progress, right? For Drake Maye, it was going from QB3 to QB2 in the spring. Caedan Wallace going from right tackle with the second and third team to the first team left tackle after 2 practices, and then staying there for the last 4 days. Mm-hmm. It's been impressive because we know they're going to rotate. I would not expect him to stay there for the rest of training camp, but he stayed there longer than we saw Calvin Anderson, longer than we saw Chukwuma Okorafor, who's back at right tackle. And that's encouraging. Like, that's what they're doing. They're saying, our first team offense, we're going to put a 3rd-round rookie at left tackle. He's not played there. I see the strength. I see the movement. I just know the history of rookie offensive tackles. I don't care where you were drafted or how high. It's not good. And so it'll take some time, right, especially with the transition. But I am a little bit higher on him than I expected to be. So I'm with you there. I have another rookie offensive lineman, though. And this isn't so much in team periods because, again, we're looking at the ball, who's throwing, who's catching, what's the route, was there any kind of pressure? But Layden Robinson has been a right guard every single day with the second team. And when they go into one-on-ones, this dude not only sprints to the line, whatever they have set up on the far end of the field where you can see them go, snap the ball, and there's a line of offense and a line of defense, and one guy will rush against another whose job is obviously to stop him. Layden Robinson is sprinting in and out of this drill. When he's in the drill, he is, this is a nerd moment for me. anyone who's watched Dragon Ball Z or has any sort of idea of what like throwing energy or air or I don't even remember the term. Maybe I'm not that big of a nerd. He stunned with one hand Dietrich Wise in a way that I thought I only saw in cartoons during one-on-one pass rush. Like put the hand to the chest and Dietrich Wise went backwards, stumbled backwards in a way that was like, did he not expect that to happen when the whistle blew? Because that's how strong this dude is. And I wrote earlier this season, he's had shades of Shaq Mason. He was 3-0 one-on-one pass rush yesterday. He was 2-1 the day before. These are small individual drills, but the way he's built, especially for a player where pass protection was his weakness, I would say, in addition to the penalties coming out of college, that's another one. I was pretty critical of the pick. I'm not coming around just yet, but I'm more open to it because he's taking care of business.
Yeah, he is. He's again another. He's an impressive dude. The strength matters. To your point, Sidney So did the same thing, I'd have to check my notes again. He did it to someone where it was a one-handed thing, and he just boom, stopped him.
Strike
and
system,
he actually
baby.
said we talked. Yeah, well, we talked to him afterwards, and he was like, I couldn't believe the play was over. One shot, and I was like, wow, I won the play. All right, I like that. So Scott Peters giving them some more tools to work with in that bag. It's interesting. Like I like the draft class so far. I mean, it's not been consistent. The Polk and Baker. There's been some ups and downs, and Drake heads the list, and obviously he's been not what we're hoping for just yet. But like there's some pieces there that looks like some of these guys can play and contribute this season, and that's obviously pretty important as you're trying to build this thing and build this offense from the ground floor.
All right, we got to zip through the next 8 minutes here. We have 2 stock downs. This is players who are surprising us or underwhelming so far. I've written a lot about Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk had the play of the day yesterday. He led all players in catches during team periods with 4. He gets an honorable mention. Baker does too. He's been more flash in one-on-ones and had the bigger plays, the better plays, but consistency day to day has not been there. 2 of 5 on targets and team drills on Monday, goes down to, I think, 0 of 2 on Tuesday. So if you want to know how I feel about Javon Baker, see the tweets, read the stories. I'll add Alex Austin in there. He's tied for the team lead in pass breakups through 6 practices. Everyone's favorite sleeper here in the roster. And Dietrich Wise has been solid. 2 pass breakups, a sack, aside from getting blasted by Layden Robinson, who is now making me realize that the Dragon Ball Z reference is the only thing that's going to be populating the YouTube comments and any replies to the tweet when I send this podcast out, as opposed to the 50 minutes of talking mostly football. Two stock down for you, and I bet we're going to overlap at least on one, if not both.
Oh, I bet you we don't.
Oh.
Josh Uche, Bailey Zappi.
Okay, so we do have one. Josh Uche.
Okay.
4 days in, I'm going, where has he been? I see him on the field.
That's what
he's just invisible. And then the next day he goes 0 for 3 in one-on-ones and gets kicked out of practice for fighting. Yesterday he had a would-be sack, but that's it for me. Like I'm fully with you on this, so take it from here.
One of our bold predictions on Boston Sports Journal, I said, I can't quit you, Josh Uche. I was just thinking like, all right, well, if, again, this is before Judon pulled his stunt, but I'm like, well, if Judon's back on the field and Barmore's on the field, like I think that Gerard has the relationship with Uche that, like he said to him, we didn't use you properly last year. We're going to give you more opportunities. And I'm thinking if Judon's out there and Barmore's out there, he's going to get single blocked, and with some consistency, he can beat those guys. So I'm thinking like double-digit sack guy. And I am just been underwhelmed by the level of play thus far. And I think we were scheduled to talk to him maybe once or twice so far. That hasn't happened yet. I'm just kind of curious to see where his head is at. And then on Zappi, like, look, man, body language is terrible. I get it to a certain degree. I do. Like, when we talked to him in the spring, they told me I'm in a competition. And then he probably felt like you moved Drake ahead of me, and I'm not sure that Drake outplayed me. So why am I still here? And I think now it's very much the vibe is, why the hell am I still here? Like hands behind the back, just kind of like going through the motions. And like I said, I kind of understand a little bit of the frustration here, but dude, you're not so good that you can pout. Like, I mean, I guess if I'm him, I'd be going up the back stairs to Elliot Wolf and Matt Gross saying, why am I here? Cut me, trade me. Can we just do this? Because this feels fruitless.
I would say he got the big win of his career when Mac Jones got traded and he got to stay put. So anything after this is almost gravy for him, knowing
Yeah.
how their
Yeah.
relationship either never existed or just completely disintegrated in 2023 when they were avoiding each other in team hotels on the road, maybe even not taking the same elevator when
Unbelievable.
possible. Things you hear. Anyway, my second was Juju Smith-Schuster. I say this is someone who was low on him to begin with in camp, reported a year ago. The knee was not 100%, has never been 100%. We saw it in the season opener, right? The column. A lot of people were upset that I said he wasn't, he was signed to be a number one. That was the money they gave him relative to the rest of the receivers. And
Yep.
right now, they don't even see him as a number 5 when you include running backs and tight ends as potential targets. And that's only played out since. And I don't see a better version of him through 6 practices. Had a drop yesterday, a couple of catches to his credit, one-on-ones, separating laterally or with his long speed. It's just not happening. He's a bigger body,
Yeah.
but for a team that's going to undergo a youth movement, my bold prediction at the Boston Herald was I think they would eat the money and cut him at the end of camp
Yeah.
because you just can't trade him. I don't think you have any disagreement there.
No, no. I mean, I could have easily put him on the list,
Too obvious.
but I just don't expect him to be. To your point, I don't expect him to be here. I think there was a practice, maybe it was Friday, where I think I turned to Andy Hart from WEI and I was like, just cut him now. Like, what are we like? And it's not for effort. He's giving
Yeah.
effort. It's just the body is unwilling. Jacoby Myers said it at the Super Bowl, right? Like, the league caught up to him physically. Like he's not the same guy because of the punishment that he's taken and the shape that his knees are in. And I asked him yesterday. He still insists that 1,000-yard receiver is in there. I don't know where he's getting 1,000 yards. Maybe in flag football, but not in the NFL.
Yeah, walking to and from his car before and after practices and games this season. That was hard. But no, his knee has betrayed him, and it's a bummer because he's still only 27. Something that someone told me the other day, and I was like, "That's just come on, just double check that." No, he's 27. He got drafted when he was 20 at a USC, and his best is behind him, and it's been even worse for a guy who tried to sell us in the spring like he's 100% rested up. Watched Bridgerton, your favorite show, I know, and now he's back and looks like the same guy. All right, 2 quick thoughts. One non-Maye offensive thought, and then a non-Judon/Barmore thought on the defense.
I would just say, obviously spent a lot of time watching the wide receivers as they've tried to rework that room. And I would just say there's a level of inconsistency there. Baker has his moments, had 2 practices in a row where people were, I'm not going to say it because I've already said it 3 times. People were excited about his performance. And then yesterday he had 0 bursts. Like one of the things that I liked about him early in camp is when the ball was in the air, there were a lot of times where he was even with the defensive back. And then when the ball got in the air, he was leaving the defensive back. And he made, you had this little burst, a burst, by the way, that I haven't seen from Polk, which is a little slightly concerning for me. But then yesterday he didn't have it. So maybe just dead legs, but he didn't track down some balls yesterday. They had been tracking down prior. Polk has done his best work, it feels like, within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And when he does get open down the field, the window is small, which again, it's this league. But we've seen, like Baker will pull away from a guy and create a couple yards of separation. Taekwon will do that. Polk is he's going to be more of a technician, I think, and it's going to have to be one with sharp cuts and winning, more competitive type situations. And I think he has the hands to do that. I think he's a strong hands. I think he goes back to the ball very well, but again, just a little bit inconsistent. And not having Pop out there certainly has changed the equation. He finally got out there in the red non-contact for his first 7-on-7, but still hasn't participated in team unless I missed something. And he's the guy that gets open in a phone booth, and he's probably going to be the guy who eats most of the targets, so that's not having him out there sort of impacts the way you look at everyone else. I've been sort of on KJ Osborne. I think he's fine. I thought the signing was fine. He's a professional, but he's not someone to me that you're going to feature in any shape, way, or form. And the one thing I will give you, and I guess incorrectly on Thornton, is that there have been some Taekwon moments, and we've been through this before with him in the early parts of summer, and he's got to carry that through. But the speed's still there, and that to me is if there's a little bit more consistency in catching the football and knowing where he's going, which thus far I feel like he has shown that consistency, then he'll make a case to be on the roster when all's said and done.
Yeah, right now I have him on the roster in my unofficial 53 man that
Yep.
I had to rattle off my receivers last night in BST off the top of my head. Thought I got to 5, and turns out I had 6. And then Felger said something about counting on his toes, to which I said, "What? Why? What? What's going on here?" But also,
Did you have Kayshawn on or
no,
off?
off. I get that people want him to be on. I understand we're still hammering the 2020 LSU freshman year production. He's a 6th-round
Jesus,
pick
yeah.
who's looked like it was a healthy scratch for more than half of last season. Has not
Mhm.
separated himself this summer from within a bad receiving group. The flashes are few and far between. And when you talk about Tyquan Thornton, he's had the flashes that we've seen before, but also been more consistent. Like, this is a guy who's getting about 2 catches per day. And there are some players, including KJ Osborne, who have gone over in certain practices. And that happens. It's training camp. Osborne, the way you described him is kind of like, the guy your sister brings home. Not my sister, just generally, like, and everyone's like, oh yeah, they're nice, like, they're fine. Like, what do you think? He just okay, like that's what it is. KJ's like fine. He's been okay. If you were
Yeah, I don't hate him. I don't, and yeah, it's just fine. He's
yeah.
fine.
I would say this too for people who are upset. We're not doing a lot more Javon Baker and a lot more Jalen Polk. Giardi and I are not here to hype up the rookies. Like, we're not going to be tweeting, this dude is a problem after 6 days of camp and only 2 in pads.
Uh,
You need to see it a little bit more. Polk has been steadier.
yeah.
Happy with him.
Yep.
Baker's had the better flashes. He moves different than the rest of this group. That's a fact. And I'm excited.
Yep.
You got to earn it. And no one's earning anything
Mhm.
this early in camp. Now, I will say, next episode, we will talk a lot more about the rookies. My non-May offensive thought was the run game. Excellent on Monday. First day of pads was like, you guys, the offensive line's banged up and doesn't have one
Mhm.
reliable center. I couldn't tell. Granted, Barmore was out. Godchow was in and out of team periods, even though some people wrote that he was non-participant in contact drills. Not true. Participated Monday and
Interesting.
Tuesday. And Antonio Gibson looks great. That dude's only been back for the last 3 days. I like what I see. Him and Stevenson, I don't think can really be on the field together at the same time and pose as much of a threat as people might be inclined to believe. But I'm very intrigued by that 1-2 combination because he's been really, really good. Let's just grab the defensive thought because we did a lot on Judon and Barmore and talked about Caedan, a little bit of the corners. But unless you're really itching to share that with the people.
No, I was just going to say, and I sort of touched on it earlier. There's a lot on them.
Yeah.
There's and now the pressure grows with the Judon situation and how that's going to be handled. And obviously, the likelihood that Barmore is certainly not around in the short term, but maybe not around for the entire season, depending. Again, we don't have full details, and nor do they in terms of how that's going to play. But those are 2 massive pieces to the puzzle, and if the offense is going to be fighting to just be competent, the defense, if you're going to stay in games, is going to have to be as good as they were last year, and that's a lot to ask.
Yeah.
In back-to-back years, especially this year when you look at the schedule and the at least the healthy quarterbacks, if those guys are playing and some of the receivers are playing, it's going to be a massive challenge for them, far greater challenge than they faced last year.
Way off the radar, backup linebackers, O'Shane Ximines, William Bradley King. I think one of those dudes is making the roster. I don't know who it is. Both have flashed the last couple of days in pads, pass breakup, sack for Ximines, repping with the first team defense in spurts. But they're going to flash in the preseason. And this is my super bold, lame prediction. Fan base is going to be in on one of them. We're all going to look up, again, as I did before the show, how to pronounce Ximines. Or go, oh, Bradley King, where's he been? Second-year player. We'll see what he does. But I think one of those guys making the roster, partly because of special teams, which we did not talk about at all. All right, I got to go.
That was a deep cut.
That's what we have here in the pod. I didn't say it was anything but lame. A little bit bold. Little breaking news for you as we go out, and we're not going to talk about this. I just want to let everyone know. Bill Belichick is co-hosting and co-producing a new football show on the Underdog Media Network. Yes, Bill Belichick, famous for once dismissing fantasy football as, I don't know how he put it, but it was a regular Bill snort and dismissal, is now working for a fantasy company, Underdog Sports, to co-host and co-produce a show, in addition to being on Pat McAfee, in addition to doing the Manning Cast, in addition to being on Inside the NFL. I love this turn for Bill. It's something I could never have seen coming as much as we knew he would pursue media. He's somehow busier than you and me and
He's making a lot more money than us too.
Yeah.
I would bet you that underdog fantasy thing pays pretty well. Makes you think, you know what? I could get behind this fantasy football stuff after all.
Especially when they have to explain to him, how does this air on YouTube? They just have videos. No. Sorry, Bill. It's they're live now, and people watch as much as they do cable on the YouTube. The tube face. Anyway, Mike Giardi, thank you. Excellent as always. I will see you on that sweaty media hill Thursday for practice, day 7 of Patriots training camp.
All right, brother.